What if I told you that one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs of our time was once humiliated in a luxury store, only to return the next day as the new owner? This isn't just a story about revenge, it's about dignity, brilliance, and how one man's vision changed everything. Meet Alexander Chen, a 34-year-old software architect whose mind worked like a supercomputer, processing complex algorithms while others were still figuring out basic equations. Alexander wasn't your typical tech genius. Born with dwarfism, he stood at 4 feet 2 inches, but his intellectual stature towered over most people in Silicon Valley. By age 12, he was coding in multiple programming languages. By 16, he had developed his first mobile app that would later sell for 6 figures. By 25, he had founded 3 successful startups, each one more innovative than the last. His latest venture, Quantum Logic Solutions, had just secured a Series C funding round worth $500 million, making Alexander one of the youngest billionaires in the tech industry. But success hadn't come easily. Throughout his career, Alexander faced countless moments where people underestimated him, where his ideas were dismissed before he even spoke, where meetings were scheduled in venues that weren't accessible, as if his presence was an afterthought. He had learned to navigate a world that wasn't built for him, not just physically, but socially and professionally. Each challenge had only sharpened his resolve and his business acumen. Alexander had a particular weakness for luxury watches. Not because of status, but because of the intricate engineering that went into each timepiece. He appreciated the precision, the craftsmanship, the way hundreds of tiny components worked in perfect harmony, much like the code he wrote. His collection included vintage Rolexes, limited edition Pateks, and custom pieces from independent watchmakers. But there was one watch he had been coveting for months, a rare 1967 Rolex Daytona Paul Newman that had just arrived at Meridian Luxury, the most exclusive watch boutique in the city. The boutique was legendary in collector circles. Located on Fifth Avenue, it occupied 3 floors of a historic building, with each level dedicated to different tiers of luxury timepieces. The ground floor showcased contemporary luxury brands, the second floor housed vintage and rare pieces, and the third floor was reserved for their most exclusive clients and custom services. Meridian had built its reputation on discretion, expertise, and catering to the world's most discerning collectors. Their client list included Hollywood A-listers, Fortune 500 CEOs, and European royalty. Alexander had been following the Daytona's journey through various auction houses and private sales for over a year. When he learned it had arrived at Meridian, he immediately cleared his afternoon schedule. This wasn't just any watch, it was a piece of horological history, with a provenance that traced back to a famous race car driver from the 1970s. The asking price was $750,000, a sum that represented mere pocket change for someone of Alexander's wealth. But the watch's true value lay in its rarity and the story it carried. As Alexander prepared for his visit to Meridian, he chose his outfit carefully. He understood the psychology of luxury retail. First impressions mattered immensely. He selected a custom-tailored Tom Ford suit in charcoal gray, handcrafted Italian leather shoes, and his current favorite timepiece, a platinum Patek Philippe that had belonged to his late father. Every detail was calculated to communicate his serious collector status and financial capability. The irony wasn't lost on him that he needed to dress a certain way to be taken seriously when purchasing a watch that cost more than most people's homes. But Alexander had learned to play the game, understanding that in the world of luxury retail, perception often preceded reality. He had faced this challenge countless times before, walking into boardrooms where his net worth exceeded that of everyone else combined, yet still having to prove his credibility because people's initial assumptions were based on his appearance rather than his achievements. As his driver navigated through Manhattan traffic toward Fifth Avenue, Alexander reviewed the technical specifications of the Daytona one more time on his tablet. The watch featured a manually wound Valjoux 727 movement, a black exotic dial with cream subdials, and the distinctive red Daytona text that made Paul Newman models so coveted. But beyond the specifications, Alexander appreciated the watch's place in automotive and horological history, representing an era when racing and timekeeping intersected in the most elegant way possible. The brass doors of Meridian Luxury gleamed under the afternoon sun as Alexander approached the boutique. The storefront exuded old-world elegance with its marble facade and crystal-clear windows displaying carefully curated timepieces like precious artifacts in a museum. As he pushed through the heavy doors, the subtle chime announced his arrival, and the cool, climate-controlled air carried the faint scent of leather and polish that luxury establishments seemed to perfect. The ground floor was a testament to refined taste. Glass cases lined the walls, each illuminated with precise lighting that made every watch face sparkle like a constellation. The interior design balanced modern minimalism with classic luxury: white marble floors, dark wood paneling, and soft ambient lighting that created an atmosphere of exclusivity and reverence for the timepieces on display. Alexander approached the reception desk where a young woman in an impeccably tailored black dress looked up from her computer screen. Her smile appeared practiced, professional, but Alexander had developed a sixth sense over the years for detecting the subtle shift in people's expressions when they first saw him. The smile faltered for just a microsecond, barely perceptible, but he caught it. "Good afternoon," Alexander said, his voice carrying the confidence that came from years of commanding boardrooms and investor meetings. "I'm here to see the 1967 Rolex Daytona Paul Newman that arrived this week. I believe it's being held on the second floor." The receptionist's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "Oh, that particular piece. Let me check with our senior sales associate." She picked up a sleek black phone and spoke in hushed tones, occasionally glancing at Alexander. After a brief conversation, she hung up and forced another smile. "Mr. Whitmore will be down shortly to assist you." Minutes passed in uncomfortable silence. Alexander browsed the ground floor collection, admiring a beautiful Cartier Santos and a limited edition Omega Speedmaster, but his attention was divided between the watches and the subtle dynamics playing out around him. He noticed how other customers, all of whom appeared to be what society deemed conventional in appearance, were immediately escorted upstairs by well-dressed sales associates, while he remained waiting in the lobby area. When Mr. Whitmore finally appeared, Alexander immediately understood the boutique's hierarchy. Whitmore was a man in his 50s, impeccably dressed in a three-piece suit, with the kind of refined bearing that suggested decades in luxury retail. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his demeanor carried the authority of someone accustomed to dealing with high-net-worth individuals. However, as his eyes met Alexander's, that familiar shift occurred, the almost imperceptible recalibration that happened when people's preconceptions collided with reality. "Good afternoon, sir," Whitmore said, his tone polite but notably cooler than the warmth Alexander had observed him display with other customers. "I understand you're interested in viewing some of our timepieces?" "Specifically the 1967 Rolex Daytona Paul Newman," Alexander replied, maintaining his professional composure despite sensing the undercurrent of condescension. "I've been tracking its availability and would like to examine it for potential purchase." Whitmore's expression grew more guarded. "Ah, yes, that particular piece. It's quite exclusive, you understand. The price point is substantial. Perhaps I could show you some of our more accessible collections first? We have some lovely pieces on this floor that might be more suitable." The word suitable hung in the air like a challenge. Alexander felt the familiar surge of frustration that he had experienced countless times throughout his career. The assumption that his appearance somehow correlated with his financial capability or his sophistication as a collector. But he had learned to channel that frustration into determination. "Mr. Whitmore," Alexander said, his voice remaining steady but gaining an edge of steel, "I'm a serious collector with specific interests. The Daytona isn't just a purchase for me. It's the culmination of over a year of research and waiting. I'm prepared to make a decision today if the piece meets my standards." Whitmore's smile became even more strained. "Sir, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but that particular watch carries a price tag of $750,000. It's not the kind of piece we typically show without certain assurances. Perhaps if you could provide some references or documentation of your collecting history or financial verification." The request for financial verification was the final insult. Alexander had purchased watches worth hundreds of thousands of dollars from other boutiques without ever being asked to prove his creditworthiness. The implications were clear. Whitmore was making assumptions based solely on Alexander's physical appearance, assumptions that no other customer would face. I see, Alexander said quietly, his business instincts now fully engaged. And tell me, Mr. Whitmore, do you require financial verification from all your customers, or just certain ones? The question hung in the air, its implications unmistakable. Whitmore's face flushed slightly, but his position remained unchanged. Sir, we have policies in place to protect both our clients and our inventory. I'm sure you understand the necessity of certain protocols. Alexander nodded slowly, his mind already shifting from customer to strategist. I understand perfectly, Mr. Whitmore. Thank you for making your policies so transparent. He handed Whitmore his business card, a simple, elegant design that bore only his name and the Quantum Logic Solutions logo. You might want to research that company name. I have a feeling we'll be speaking again very soon. As Alexander turned to leave, he could feel the eyes of everyone in the boutique following him. The humiliation burned, but it was accompanied by something far more powerful, a crystalline clarity about what needed to happen next. This wasn't just about a watch anymore, it was about dignity, respect, and ensuring that no one else would face the discrimination he had just experienced. The elevator in Alexander's Manhattan office building hummed quietly as it ascended to the 42nd floor, but his mind was already racing ahead to the calls he needed to make. Quantum Logic Solutions occupied the entire floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. The office design reflected Alexander's personality: clean lines, cutting-edge technology seamlessly integrated into elegant spaces, and an atmosphere that promoted both collaboration and deep thinking. Alexander's corner office was his command center. Multiple monitors displayed real-time market data, project timelines, and communication channels with his global team. But today, those screens would serve a different purpose. As he settled into his ergonomic chair, one of the few pieces of furniture in the office specifically designed to accommodate his height, Alexander's fingers flew across the keyboard with the precision of a concert pianist. His first call was to Sarah Chen, his chief financial officer and younger sister, whose business acumen complemented his technical brilliance. Sarah had been by his side through every major business decision, and she understood both his drive for success and his commitment to fairness and dignity. Sarah, I need you to research everything about Meridian Luxury: ownership structure, financial position, lease agreements, supplier relationships, staff structure, everything, Alexander said without preamble. And I need it within 2 hours. What happened? Sarah asked, immediately recognizing the focused intensity in her brother's voice that signaled something significant had occurred. Alexander recounted his experience at the boutique, his voice remaining clinical and factual, but Sarah could hear the underlying anger and determination. She had witnessed similar incidents throughout their lives: the school administrators who assumed Alexander couldn't handle advanced coursework, the investors who initially dismissed his pitches, the competitors who underestimated his strategic thinking. Each time, Alexander had channeled the discrimination into fuel for success. Consider it done, Sarah said. But, Alex, what exactly are you planning? Justice, Alexander replied simply. And maybe a lesson in business ethics. While Sarah's team began their research, Alexander placed his second call to Marcus Webb, his legal counsel and one of the most respected corporate attorneys in the city. Marcus had handled the legal aspects of all Alexander's major acquisitions and understood both the letter and spirit of business law. Marcus, I need to understand the legal framework around retail discrimination and civil rights violations in luxury retail settings, Alexander began. Specifically, what constitutes discriminatory business practices and what remedies are available? Marcus listened carefully as Alexander described the incident, taking notes and asking pointed questions about witnesses, specific statements made, and the boutique's policies. Alex, you definitely have grounds for a discrimination complaint, both civil and potentially criminal. But given your resources and influence, you might have other options that could be more impactful. That's exactly what I was thinking, Alexander said. What would you need to structure an acquisition of a retail business? Everything Sarah's team is probably already researching, Marcus replied with a knowing smile in his voice. Financial records, ownership structure, outstanding debts, lease agreements, and any legal vulnerabilities. Give me everything she finds, and I'll have a complete acquisition strategy by tomorrow morning. Alexander's third call was to David Park, his longtime friend and investment banker who had facilitated deals worth billions over their decade-long relationship. David operated in the rarefied world of high-stakes acquisitions where relationships, timing, and discretion were everything. David, I need you to quietly explore the market for luxury retail acquisitions, specifically high-end watch boutiques in Manhattan, Alexander said. I'm particularly interested in any businesses that might be facing financial pressure or ownership transitions. That's oddly specific, Alex, David chuckled. Planning to diversify into retail? That's quite a departure from tech. Let's call it a personal interest, Alexander replied. But I need complete discretion on this. No one should know Quantum Logic is making inquiries. Understood. I'll have some preliminary information by this evening. As Alexander ended the call, Sarah appeared in his doorway with a thick folder and a tablet displaying complex financial charts. Her expression was a mixture of admiration and concern. She knew that when her brother set his mind to something, the results were usually extraordinary, but sometimes the path to get there was unpredictable. You're going to love this, Sarah said, settling into the chair across from his desk. Meridian Luxury is in more trouble than they realize. The business is owned by Harrison Whitmore Sr. That's probably the father of the man you met today. They're a family operation that's been around for 30 years, but they've been struggling for the past 5 years. She pulled up financial charts on her tablet. Their revenue has declined by 40% since 2019. Luxury retail took a massive hit during the pandemic, and they never fully recovered. They're carrying significant debt, their lease is up for renewal next year at what will likely be much higher rates, and their insurance costs have skyrocketed due to the value of their inventory. Alexander studied the numbers with the same intensity he applied to analyzing tech startups. What about their supplier relationships? That's where it gets really interesting, Sarah continued. They're essentially a consignment operation for most of their high-value pieces. The watches they display aren't actually owned by them. They're held on consignment from collectors, estates, and other dealers. If they lost their reputation or their physical location, most of those consignment agreements could be terminated with 30 days' notice. So their entire business model is dependent on maintaining their reputation and their Fifth Avenue presence, Alexander mused. What would happen if both of those were threatened simultaneously? Sarah smiled knowingly. They'd be forced to sell, probably at a significant discount to avoid bankruptcy. Alexander leaned back in his chair, his mind processing the information like a chess grandmaster considering multiple moves ahead. Sarah, I want you to prepare 3 different scenarios. First, what would it cost to acquire Meridian Luxury outright? Second, what would it cost to acquire their building and terminate their lease? Third, what would it cost to start a competing boutique that could capture their market share? Already working on it, Sarah replied. But Alex, even if we can acquire them, what then? Running a luxury retail operation is completely different from tech. It's not exactly your area of expertise. Alexander's eyes lit up with the kind of excitement that always preceded his most innovative projects. Sarah, what if it didn't have to be just a luxury retail operation? What if it could be something entirely new, a fusion of technology, personalization, and authentic luxury service? What if we could create a retail experience that treats every customer with dignity and respect while using technology to personalize and enhance every interaction? As the pieces of his plan began to coalesce, Alexander felt the familiar surge of creative energy that had driven every major success in his career. This wasn't just about revenge or proving a point. This was about transforming an entire industry and creating something that would serve as a lasting testament to the values he believed in. The next morning arrived with the crisp clarity that only Manhattan could deliver, and Alexander Chen was already 3 hours into his workday. His office had transformed overnight into a war room, with whiteboards covered in acquisition timelines, financial projections, and strategic plans. Sarah had worked until 2 in the morning preparing comprehensive scenarios, while Marcus had crafted a legal framework that would make the acquisition both swift and ironclad. David Park's call came at exactly 9 a.m., right on schedule. "Alex, you're not going to believe the timing on this." David's voice carried the excitement of someone who lived for complex deals. "Meridian Luxury is in worse shape than even your sister discovered. Harrison Whitmore Sr. had a stroke 3 months ago, and the family is quietly exploring options. They need liquidity, and they need it fast. The son, the one you met yesterday, is in way over his head trying to manage both the business operations and his father's care." Alexander felt a moment of genuine sympathy for the Whitmore family's medical situation, but it didn't diminish his resolve to address the discrimination he had experienced. If anything, it reinforced his belief that the business needed new leadership with different values. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" Alexander asked. "If we moved fast and made an offer they couldn't refuse, we could have preliminary agreements within a week. The building lease situation is actually advantageous. The current lease expires in 8 months, but there's a purchase option built in that the Whitmores can't afford to exercise. If we acquired the business, we could also acquire the building." Alexander's mind raced through the implications. "David, I want you to prepare an offer for both the business and the building. Make it generous enough that they can't say no, but structure it so we can take possession quickly." "How generous are we talking?" "Whatever it takes," Alexander replied without hesitation. "This isn't about maximizing our return on investment, it's about creating something meaningful." While David worked on the acquisition framework, Alexander turned his attention to the transformation plan. He had spent the early morning hours researching luxury retail operations, studying everything from customer experience design to inventory management systems. But his vision went far beyond simply improving an existing model. He called in Elena Rodriguez, his head of user experience design, whose work had revolutionized interfaces across all of Quantum Logic's products. Elena was a creative genius who understood how to make complex technology feel intuitive and human. "Elena, I want you to imagine the future of luxury retail," Alexander began, pulling up architectural plans of the Meridian building on his main monitor. "What if every customer who walked into a boutique felt like they were the most important person in the world? What if technology could help sales associates understand not just what customers wanted to buy, but what would truly make them happy?" Elena's eyes lit up with the same creative fire that Alexander recognized in himself. "Are we talking about AI-powered customer profiling? Predictive analytics for luxury preferences? Augmented reality for trying on pieces?" "All of that and more," Alexander replied. "But the technology has to be invisible. It has to enhance human connection, not replace it. I want every customer to feel seen, respected, and valued, regardless of who they are or what they look like." Over the next several hours, Alexander's team developed a comprehensive vision for what Meridian Luxury could become. The technical specifications were impressive. AI systems that could analyze customer preferences from their browsing patterns, augmented reality displays that could show watches in different lighting conditions and on different wrist sizes, and blockchain-based authentication systems that could verify the provenance of every piece. But the real innovation was in the service philosophy. Alexander wanted to create a training program for sales associates that focused on dignity, respect, and genuine expertise. He envisioned a place where customers were welcomed for their passion for horology, not judged for their appearance or presumed wealth. Marcus arrived at noon with a legal strategy that was both comprehensive and swift. "Alex, I've structured this as a distressed asset acquisition with humanitarian elements," he explained, spreading documents across the conference table. "We're offering to cover Harrison Sr.'s medical expenses as part of the deal, and we're guaranteeing employment for all current staff during a transition period. It's harder for them to say no to an offer that solves their immediate problems while treating their people fairly." The offer was submitted at 2 p.m., delivered by courier to the Whitmore family's attorney. Alexander had learned from years of high-stakes negotiations that timing was everything. The offer needed to arrive when the family was feeling the most pressure, but before they had time to explore other options. At 4 p.m., Alexander's phone rang. It was Harrison Whitmore Jr., the man who had humiliated him just 24 hours earlier. "Mr. Chen," Whitmore's voice was strained, uncertain. We received your offer. I have to ask, is this because of yesterday? Because if it is, I want you to know that we're prepared to apologize and make things right. You don't need to buy our entire business just to get the watch you wanted. Alexander paused, considering his response carefully. Mr. Whitmore, this isn't about revenge, and it's not about one watch. It's about creating something better. Your family built something valuable over 30 years, but it needs new leadership and a new vision. I'm offering you a way to preserve what your father created while transforming it into something that serves all customers with dignity. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly a minute. Finally, Whitmore spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. We need to discuss this with our family and our advisors. Can you give us until tomorrow morning? Of course, Alexander replied. Mr. Whitmore, I want you to know that if we move forward with this acquisition, there will be a place for you in the new organization if you're interested in learning a different approach to luxury retail. This isn't about destroying what exists, it's about making it better. As Alexander ended the call, he felt a complex mixture of emotions. The business strategist in him was excited about the potential for innovation and transformation. The human rights advocate in him was satisfied that justice was being served. But there was also a deeper satisfaction. The knowledge that he was creating something that would prevent others from experiencing the discrimination he had faced. Sarah appeared in his doorway with a knowing smile. So, brother, ready to become a luxury retailer? Alexander grinned, the same expression that had appeared on his face before every major breakthrough in his career. Sarah, we're not becoming luxury retailers. We're reinventing what luxury retail can be. The call came at 8:47 a.m. the next morning. Harrison Whitmore Jr.'s voice was different, resigned but also relieved, like someone who had been carrying a burden too heavy for too long. Mr. Chen, we accept your offer. The family agrees that you can provide the leadership and resources that Meridian needs to survive and thrive. Alexander felt a surge of satisfaction, not from victory, but from the knowledge that real change was now possible. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. I want you to know that we're going to honor your family's legacy while building something extraordinary. The acquisition moved with the speed that only unlimited resources and expert legal teams could achieve. Within 72 hours, contracts were signed, funds were transferred, and Alexander Chen officially owned both Meridian Luxury and the building that housed it. But the real work was just beginning. Alexander's first action as owner was to call an all-staff meeting. The 15 employees of Meridian, from sales associates to security to administrative staff, gathered in the boutique after hours, their faces showing a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. Many had worked there for years, and they were uncertain about what this tech billionaire's ownership would mean for their jobs and their industry. I know you're all wondering what changes are coming, Alexander began, standing before the group in the same showroom where he had been humiliated just days earlier. Let me start by saying that every one of you has a job here for as long as you want it. What happened to me earlier this week wasn't the fault of the staff, it was a failure of leadership and training. He paused, making eye contact with each person in the room. But we're going to do more than just fix what was broken. We're going to create something that has never existed before, a luxury retail experience that combines the finest craftsmanship and expertise with genuine respect for every human being who walks through our doors. Over the following weeks, Alexander implemented his transformation plan with the same methodical precision that had made his technology companies successful. Elena Rodriguez worked with the staff to design new customer interaction protocols that emphasized dignity and inclusion. Every sales associate received training not just in watch expertise, but in unconscious bias recognition and inclusive customer service. The physical transformation was equally impressive. The boutique's ground floor was redesigned with accessibility in mind, adjustable displays that could accommodate customers of all heights, wider aisles for wheelchair access, and seating areas where customers could comfortably examine timepieces. The technology integration was seamless but powerful. Digital systems that could instantly provide detailed information about any watch's history, condition, and provenance, while also learning customer preferences to enhance future visits. But the most significant change was philosophical. Alexander instituted a policy that became known as the Dignity First principle. Every customer, regardless of appearance, age, background, or presumed wealth, would receive the same level of respect and service. Sales associates were trained to engage with customers based on their expressed interests and knowledge, not on assumptions about their purchasing power. The new Meridian Luxury reopened 6 weeks after the acquisition, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Word spread quickly through collector communities about the boutique's transformation, not just the technological innovations, but the genuine culture of respect and inclusion. Customers who had felt unwelcome at other high-end retailers found a new home at Meridian. Harrison Whitmore Jr., who had accepted Alexander's offer to stay on as a senior sales associate, proved to be one of the most effective advocates for the new approach. His experience with the family business, combined with his newfound understanding of inclusive service, made him invaluable in helping other staff members adapt to the new culture. 3 months after the reopening, Alexander stood in his office reviewing the quarterly results. Revenue had increased by 35%, customer satisfaction scores were the highest in the luxury retail industry, and the boutique had a waiting list for appointments. But the numbers that mattered most to him were different. Meridian now served customers from 67 different countries, across all age ranges and backgrounds, and had become a destination for watch enthusiasts who had never felt welcome in traditional luxury retail environments. The impact extended far beyond one boutique. Other luxury retailers began adopting similar inclusive practices, recognizing that dignity and respect were not just ethical imperatives but good business strategy. Alexander was invited to speak at retail industry conferences about the intersection of technology, luxury, and social responsibility. 6 months after the acquisition, Alexander finally purchased the 1967 Rolex Daytona Paul Newman that had started everything. But the transaction was different from what he had originally imagined. Instead of a private purchase, he decided to make it a public event, inviting collectors, journalists, and industry leaders to witness the sale. Harrison Whitmore Jr. handled the transaction personally, his expertise and enthusiasm genuine as he explained the watch's history and significance. As Alexander examined the timepiece, its black exotic dial, cream subdials, and legendary red Daytona text, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. "You know," Alexander said to the assembled crowd, "this watch represents something more than horological excellence. It represents the idea that true luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about craftsmanship, history, and the shared passion of people who appreciate beautiful things." Today, this purchase represents not just the acquisition of a remarkable timepiece, but the transformation of an entire approach to luxury retail. The Daytona now sits in Alexander's collection, but its significance extends far beyond its monetary value or horological importance. It serves as a daily reminder that discrimination can be transformed into positive change, that business success and social responsibility are not mutually exclusive, and that sometimes the most powerful response to being told you don't belong is to create a space where everyone does. Alexander's transformation of Meridian Luxury became a case study taught in business schools, a model replicated by luxury retailers worldwide, and most importantly, a place where watch enthusiasts of all backgrounds could pursue their passion with dignity and respect. The boutique that had once symbolized exclusion became a beacon of inclusion, proving that true luxury lies not in keeping people out, but in welcoming them in. Today, when customers visit Meridian Luxury, they encounter an experience that seamlessly blends cutting-edge technology with old-world craftsmanship, where every person is treated with respect regardless of their appearance, and where the love of beautiful timepieces transcends all other considerations. It stands as a testament to Alexander's belief that the most powerful response to discrimination is not revenge, but transformation, creating something so much better that it makes the old way of doing things obsolete. And every time Alexander checks his Daytona, he's reminded that time itself can be transformed, that what starts as a moment of humiliation can become a lifetime of positive change, one respectful interaction at a time.